welcome to another episode of A View from the Top. I'm Adrian Cropley. A View from the Top is a regular podcast from the Centre for Strategic Communication Excellence, where I interview some of the world's leading communication professionals as we explore their career journey. Today, I'm very excited to be catching up with a dear friend and communication powerhouse in John Clemons, who has his master's. He's an APR, ABC, and an IABC fellow. And he's based in North Carolina. I tell you, this man has done it all: marketing, communications, media relations, crisis, change, training, and many very senior roles heading up internal communication, working for companies like Raytheon, Walmart, Nextel, and the Marriott Group. He has for many years run his own consultancy and now works as a consultant in crisis communication for Tata in the UK. As well as being an adjunct professor at the University of North Carolina. He's been hugely active in leading our profession through his volunteering with our professional association, especially the IABC, who is where we both met. He's now a fellow there, and he's been inducted into the Southern Region Hall of Fame, and was the past chair of, must be over 20 years ago now, and even did a stint as interim executive director. And that's where I had the great pleasure of working with this man. As we teamed up in 2012 to guide the association when I was chair. John, it is amazing to be catching up with you. Thank you for joining me.
Oh, it's so great to be with you, Adrian. It's been a while since we've talked, and I'm looking forward to this.
It has been a while, and I tell you what, there was times, back in 2012 where we probably caught up 2 or 3 times a day, even on opposite sides of the world.
Yes,
we had lots of work to do together, but it was I must say it was an absolute pleasure working with you, and it's very easy to understand your person that has gained amazing experience through a lifetime in communication. I'm not going to date you because you are undateable in terms of you never get old at all. You've remained that young at heart. John, when did it all start for you? Where did you start your career in communication?
You know, it's really interesting. When I reflect on my communications career, it probably started in high school with a journalism course, a Mr. Montgomery. My original career choice as a teenager was to be a veterinarian, and I thought I'd be working with animals. But I took this journalism course, and he changed my mind. He said, "You are really great at writing. You have a knack for this. You ought to consider journalism." And I attended Syracuse University after graduating from high school and received a BS in news journalism, and immediately took a job as a reporter for the Star Ledger newspaper. Now, here I am getting out of Syracuse and being very cocky and thinking I'm going to walk into writing front page articles. That did not happen. I did a lot of rewrites. And I wrote about high school graduations, and I wrote photo captions. But fortunately, I was glad I started that way because it was good training. And then I evolved to larger features. And then I started doing page 1 features and covering conferences. So it was great training ground. And after leaving there, I became an editor at Black Enterprise Magazine, a national business magazine in Manhattan. Which was wonderful because I wrote longer magazine pieces, and I worked with artists and models, and that was really good training. But I needed more money and I needed benefits. And so I joined AT&T as a PR specialist, where I wrote for 7 internal publications. I did photography, page layout, proofing, research, employee events. So that was really the transition from newspaper to magazine and then corporate, where I started in PR.
Wow, that's quite a transition. And when you thought about starting your career and you thought you were going to be a vet, any regrets that you moved into communication, or you still got a hankering to go back to working with animals?
Well, I still love animals, but I think I made the right career choice. That journalism course was an elective, something I chose among several courses being opened. And I think I chose it for a reason. And I think that my teacher, Mr. Montgomery, was there for a reason. And I am very pleased with how my career has turned out because of that decision. So I have no regrets.
And it's interesting you talk about your teacher there, Mr. Montgomery, and it's, when we reflect back on our careers, we look at those people that influenced us to what we were doing today. And it sounds like he had a big influence on you.
Oh, huge influence. And it was very subtle because I would turn in assignments and I kept getting high grades on them. And I'm like, hey, this is really cool. And I also like it. And he would speak to me up to class and just very casual conversations. He would talk about the profession. And it just began to evolve that I think this is where I really want to go. And I chose that direction.
Oh, that is absolutely brilliant. So what was next for you? What were some of the roles that you did that you found actually progressed your career? Because you've ended up in some very senior roles in organizations, and they're the dream jobs for many communication professionals. But what do you think what led to getting into those senior roles? What was the big kick up for you?
And just to add a little to what you said, I had some dream jobs and I had some nightmares too. So let's not rule that out. But
we try and put those aside, John.
Exactly right. Well, I stayed with AT&T for 7 years, primarily in employee communications, publications, and executive communications, but I later moved on to another telephone company in Tampa, and that was moving from a manager role to a director role, and I did employee communications, but I also expanded into media relations and PR, as well as community relations, which I really took a liking to. I then joined a nonprofit think tank in Washington, D.C., where my skills in PR were expanded to media briefings, writing and producing annual reports, managing larger teams, editorial management, and executive council. That was really interesting. That was very hard because I was learning about several areas of communications that I had no experience in, but fortunately, things worked out well. I consider myself to be a quick learner. So I think things went well there.
Look, I think, sometimes it's good to stretch yourself and go into things that are steep learning curves, because that's where you do actually pick up those skills, actually those coping skills as well. That self-doubt, you go into it and you're very cocky that you've learnt some skills and going, I'm really good at communication. Then you get grounded again when you look into another area that's much tougher.
Oh, yes, you're absolutely right. It's a little daunting when you take on new responsibilities, but when you have a good support system, that really helps. And you have a good team that can encourage you and support you. It's really about the team effort with something like that. If there was something I didn't know about annual reports, there was someone on my team who did. So that helped tremendously. But in the end, I was largely responsible. So when I left the think tank, I joined Marriott International and turned back to global employee communications, which encompassed announcements, and quarterly employee magazine articles, special HR support projects, award and recognition programs. I was reporting and writing for international Marriott leadership conferences. I was an on-air talent for a quarterly video magazine. And during that time with Marriott, within 3 years, I was promoted from a director to vice president of global employee communications. So
what a brilliant
that was
role.
an indication that I did something right. So that was really exciting.
And let's unpack that, because that is a huge step up in an organization, but it obviously meant that you did do something right. What were some of the things you think that helped propel your career, certainly in Marriott? And Marriott's a great company.
I think it was largely, I discovered a passion for the hospitality industry. I still love the hospitality industry. I love hotels. I love how they're decorated. I love the quality of service. And I'm largely talking about Marriott because to me, it is a world-class best of show company that gets it right every time. There is consistent quality and they're always looking out for the guests. And I got a chance to go to Bill Marriott's home and see his home and see his car collection. And he spoke to me and he treated me like anybody else. I felt embraced by the company, which made me want to give back more to that company. And I think people saw that passion in the projects that I did. I won an IABC Gold Quill for a program that I did for Marriott International. And it was just a wonderful experience that even now, when I was in grad school, I wrote my capstone, one of my research papers on Marriott International and some of the work they were doing in PR and media. And when I speak to students and IABC members, I always reference Marriott because I think it's a best practice company. And so that passion propelled me, and others saw promise and potential, and I got promoted.
You know, and quite right. I think it's absolutely one of the best in class organizations, particularly in that area of corporate communications and CEO communications, because Bill Marriott was very, very heavy into talking to the people. So working in internal comms for somebody like Bill would have been absolutely amazing.
It was amazing. It was amazing. And after leaving there, I moved on and joined Raytheon Company, which is a defense contract, a major defense contractor, but has since been acquired. But while I was there, I managed all strategic communications for a business division of Raytheon that included international trade shows in London and Paris, setting up media briefings, doing all of the employee communications, change management, marketing communications. My portfolio in terms of my skills and capabilities grew, and I stayed there for about 10 years. And I should also point out that I got my master's degree from Syracuse University in communications while working full-time there. So,
oh my gosh, how did you do that, John? That's a big load.
I will tell you, I almost got divorced. My wife was quite upset with all the studying I was doing. I would work, and then I just hit the books when I got back home. And she didn't take too kindly on it, but we figured out a way where I would always take her out and be aware of the sensitivities of spending a lot of time studying. But I got through it. I got through it in 2 years.
Wow.
And
well done.
That really helped me. And as you know, after Raytheon, I served as the interim executive director at IABC, which was a 6-month consulting opportunity where I worked with you and we became good friends. And I have to say that was a very challenging role, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. And it was a bi-coastal career opportunity because I was flying from Virginia to San Francisco every other week for 6 months. It was quite crazy, but it was a wonderful experience.
And you did an amazing job, John. You were probably one of the best people I've worked with in my career, even though it was only a 6-month period. I tell you what, we probably fit 2 or 3 work years into that 6 months.
I agree. Upon leaving IABC, I worked for Walmart, which was an interesting experience professionally and culturally. And after leaving Walmart, now I am teaching at the University of North Carolina at Charlotte. I teach PR writing and business communications. And as you mentioned earlier, I have virtual roles with 2 companies, one based in the US, the Consultants Collective, and a crisis management and communications consultancy in the UK, Tala.
Wow. John, and I tell you, and there's some parallel stuff in there because you've had your own business as well and running that in parallel to many roles, plus your volunteering. There's a big life to balance through your career as well. But right now, and I just want to pause on the adjunct professor role that you've currently got, because I suspect early in your career you got to the motivation that one day you would like to give back to the students. Tell me a little bit about the role that you're doing now as an adjunct professor and how much you enjoy that.
Oh, exactly, Adrian. I do want to give back. I've been very fortunate and blessed in my career for the most part. And teaching is one of the most fulfilling things I've ever done. It is so exciting to work with students and have that exchange with them, to teach them just the basics of good PR writing, how to do an employee announcement, how to write an executive bio, how to do a news release, what's involved with crisis communications, how to put together a strategic communications plan, all of the elements of becoming a really serious and successful communications or communications professional. And seeing the light in their eyes when they get it, and then getting their work and knowing that they got it, that is such a rush. I mean, I would give assignments in class and put them in groups and look at them teaching each other where points were forgotten. Another student will bring it up, but professor said X. And it was really kind of a bonding experience with each class, and they're all different. And I will say that surprisingly, at the level that I'm teaching, junior and senior, some of them need to strengthen their spelling skills, but that's a whole other story. But I love it. I love it.
It's really funny, as you and I much the same when we look back at it, because I do obviously do a lot of teaching through the training and development that we do, but it is such a wonderful experience. And occasionally you sit there as a communication professional that's grown up over many years, where spelling, punctuation, grammar was absolutely drilled into you, that you are not a communication professional unless you can do that right. And now you're starting to see, and even watching TV these days, when you look at the news reels and the the text over, and you're going, God, there's all these typos.
Yes. And I kind of blame social media for that, but that's a whole other discussion.
I know we could have a whole session on that one. Being in that role as a professor, and you're giving advice to up and coming communication professionals, those that are coming into the workforce, what are some of the tips that you share with them, and you would like to share with the people listening, that actually helped build your career? What are some of the things you would suggest people focus on?
Well, what I would tell my students, or any professional starting out, I would tell them that they have to learn the company, the employer, the person or organization that they're working for, and build relationships with advocates who can actually move your career, not just mentors. Mentors kind of guide you through an organization, but an advocate is the one behind closed doors when they're talking about, should John Clemons be promoted? And somebody says, well, he's done pretty well, but the advocate says, John has done an exceptional job, and you really need to consider him for that next step in leadership. So you need the person to help you move up in your career, the decision maker who can stand by you behind closed doors and hopefully progress your career. So make sure you build those strong relationships with advocates. I am not knocking mentors, but it is advocates who really can make a difference. I would tell any communication professional to pick the low-hanging fruit when they start on a job initially. And that would be the initiatives and actions that need to be done right away, like creating templates for announcements and media releases so there's consistency in your communications. And that allows you to work smart, not hard. I would also say be an asset to your supervisor or boss, not a liability. And that seems obvious, but what that means is being a quick learner, an effective listener, and someone who can get things done through strategic communications planning, implementation, and measurement with minimal direction. If you have to keep going back to your supervisor or boss to ask a million questions that you should have asked in the beginning, you're not helping them. They have so much to do. You need to listen effectively and get it and just go and do the job.
Get the brief right. Yeah, get the brief right and get it first.
Yes, exactly. And I guess one other thing I would say is that you need to ensure that your morals and who you are align with your employer or the company you work for. That's really important. And an example would be if you are a member of PETA and you are supportive of animal rights, you wouldn't want to work for a furrier. If you do not smoke and you don't like smoking and you never have been a smoker, why work for a tobacco company? Those are very deliberate, but there are other subtleties to the organizations that you work for. So I would tell anyone, make sure you do the research and make sure this is a company that you fully support and you're behind, and you will give 110% when you get the job.
And it really plays into that whole, I work a lot with clients these days in the employee experience space, and getting the people into an organization. And it's great when you're new and you're trying to find your first job to just kind of jump into an organization. But I think on both sides, you've got to look at, is this the right fit culturally? Because you will put your best into an organization that you love, appreciate, and are motivated by.
Exactly. And if I could quote one of our fellow communicators, Shell Holtz, he says, culture is how we do things around here.
Yeah.
And if you join an organization where the culture or how they do things there doesn't work for you, you are in the wrong place and you need to adjust quickly, or you could find yourself having a very unsuccessful career and you would have nobody to blame but yourself.
And these are lessons you learn, early in your career, because we tend to be a little bit more gung-ho. It's a bit like the example you said. You'd finish your journalism degree and you thought you were going to write for the front page as soon as you got into an organization. And we all do that. We get into this. We can change the world. So I'm going to get into this organization. If I don't like it, I'll change the organization. And that's not the reality of it.
Absolutely correct.
Get the fit. Some great words of advice, John. I really, I can understand why you are so successful as a teacher and a professor in university. Before we go, and I just, we're getting towards the end of our time now. I'd like to give an opportunity, obviously to share any other tips you would give to communication professionals.
I would think, given the current state of the world, and it kind of ties in with what's happening now, I would tell communicators or someone considering this field that you always need to sharpen your strategic skills, because your employers need you now more than ever before, as we work our way through these dual pandemics, both coronavirus and racism. Know where the company is going operationally, particularly in the months and years ahead as they re-up following these crises, because many of them are going to change direction, and you're going to have to be able to communicate that direction and get the support from employees, management, senior management, so everybody is on the same page. So make sure you understand where the business is going, particularly now. I would say stay on top of social and digital communications, because it keeps evolving, it never stops, and you will always need to know what the current electronic tools and vehicles are and how to use them to be effective going forward. Up your leadership game. I don't think anyone in our profession now can afford to be just a specialist focusing on one area. It still happens, but I would say develop your career holistically so that you can successfully manage more than one area of communications and make yourself indispensable. That's really what you want to do right now, because a number of communicators are losing their jobs because companies are cutting back in light of COVID. But make yourself indispensable. But overall, I think for communication professionals, this is our time, and we need to seize it and make the most of it.
I love that expression, John. It is our time, and we've said this in the past, but there's something that says to me more than ever, we are needed as the conscience of an organization. We are needed to do our jobs effectively. We are needed to be strategic within our organizations and driving good communication, particularly given, as you said, the landscape right now. We've got so many issues at play. And one of those issues I want to tap into now, because I know I can do this because you and I are very good friends. But we look at the whole movement with Black Lives Matter. Through your career, have you found that this is something that has either held you back or you've had to push back on as you've grown up in this world?
That's a very interesting question. And in the spirit of transparency and being honest, I will say that in my career of over 30 years, I have experienced micro and macro inequities from various individuals in companies. And I have, early in my career, I moved around a lot, largely because of how I was being treated. And I remember someone saying, boy, you moved around a lot. And I finessed an answer, but I did not say to them, it's because I was overlooked. It was because I was mistreated. It was because I had things said to me that I was shocked were said to me. And I had to, again, finesse what my response to that if I wanted to keep a job and pay my mortgage and take care of my wife and my family. So I did things that helped me survive, such as moving to other companies. But I also learned that I had to speak plainly and honestly with individuals. Sometimes it was accepted and sometimes thought I was being a bit arrogant, but I spoke my truth. And I think that was important. It was important for me. It still is, particularly now. I'm older, I'm wiser, and at this stage and age of my career, I feel like I have to be upfront and be who I am with any consulting job, even in teaching, and even in my personal and professional relationships. I just feel like I need to be straight up because I can't sit back anymore. I've had enough.
And I think the fear is, removed as you do get older. And I think there's as we're talking, I'm reflecting as older and more senior communication professionals, we have a very clear role now in speaking up on these issues because it's that credibility has been built and it is there, and we've got to keep uncovering these things. So whether it's racism, it's sexism, or it's any other ism that's in an organization, is raising these things up, because sometimes this is done out of ignorance, and the only way to overcome that ignorance is that education, and I think we have that role to play.
Yes, and now for me, it's largely ageism.
Yeah. Yes.
I can't do anything about it.
I know, and that's really hard. And I was having this conversation with my parents only a couple of weeks ago. My during the recession of the early 90s, both my parents lost their jobs. My mother was 48 and my father was 55, and neither of them could get another job.
Oh,
they were too old. And I go, oh my God, that is so scary when I think about that now. So definitely.
Well, I am. The good thing is I'm still young at heart, so we'll leave it like that.
Absolutely. You will never age. I've said that at the beginning. John, I just want to thank you so much for getting on our podcast today. It has been an absolute pleasure talking to you.
Oh, I enjoyed it. This was a blast. Ask me again. I'll do it again.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I reckon we've got to come up with a topic and just explore that topic. We'll come up with another series, I think, John. Thank you so much for taking the time out, spending it with me, and let me thank everybody for joining us today on this podcast. And stay tuned and look forward to seeing everybody or hearing from everybody in the next episode of A View from the Top.